Hello, Internet. What if I told you that a simple toy could be deadlier than any horror movie killer? That's right. The monkey promised to blend horror and comedy in a unique way. But did it actually work? Today, we're talking about this new project by Osgood Perkins. Yes, the same director of Longlegs, produced by James Wan, and based on a short story by Stephen King. With this combination, I thought, this has everything to be amazing. The trailers were intriguing, the visuals looked promising, but did the final result live up to the expectations? Before we dive into the details, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here we bring you everything about movies, series, and the best of entertainment. Now let's get into the video. Welcome everyone to another video on the channel. Today we're talking about The Monkey, the new project from Osgood Perkins, who brings his unique vision of horror to this adaptation of a Stephen King short story. This film was one of the most anticipated releases of early 2025, and like many others, I was really excited for it. From the very first promotional materials, it was clear that it would have a horror comedy vibe, the kind of horror that plays with comedic elements, even in the death scenes. And indeed, the movie starts exactly like that. The absurd, somewhat caricatured tone works well in the opening moments, and the introduction already delivers an impactful scene. But then, things start to fall apart, like a wind-up toy that's overwound until it breaks. The Monkey follows the story of Paul and Bill, twin brothers. The plot takes us back to their childhood when they were around 11 or 12 years old. Their father has disappeared, and the movie kicks off with an intense, stylized scene that immediately grabs our attention. The first sequence is excellent. It has a unique tone, an immersive atmosphere, and an over-the-top death that makes you think, okay, this movie is going to be wild. In the first few minutes, the film's premise works. It establishes a fast-paced rhythm, fully embracing the absurdity of the situation and creating bizarre yet entertaining moments. But then, the monkey shows up. Yes, a classic wind-up toy, the kind that bangs cymbals. But here, whenever it starts playing, someone dies. And the movie really leans into this idea. The characters take a while to realize the danger, but once the deaths begin, they get pretty creative. Some of them are reminiscent of Final Destination, with that "who's next?" suspense, but with a dark humor twist. There's blood, there's exaggeration, and up to a certain point, everything seems to be in the right tone. The brothers' mission is simple: get rid of the monkey before more people die. But of course, things aren't that easy. Just when they think they've succeeded, surprise, the monkey reappears and the deaths come back in full force. Now, if there's one thing you can say about The Monkey, it's that it's not afraid to go over the top. The movie constantly plays with audience expectations. What will the next death be? Or better yet, how will it happen? Will it be a head exploding? Someone catching on fire? Or maybe a snake appearing out of nowhere and attacking someone? These moments are well executed, with fast, intense editing that makes the first half of the film fun to watch. But then we get to the second half, and that's where everything starts to fall apart. Up until this point, the movie had a clear identity, working as a satire of traditional horror. But when the story jumps forward in time and shows the brothers as adults, the pacing crashes. The characters, who weren't all that engaging to begin with, become even more disconnected. The father-son relationship, which could have been one of the film's strongest elements, ends up feeling shallow. The script tries to explore their emotional distance and their attempt at reconnection, but the development is weak, making these scenes feel like mere filler between the death sequences. On top of that, the movie rushes through the final moments, as if it's scrambling to wrap everything up in a hurry. Oh, and there's a plot twist with no real payoff. But honestly, it doesn't work. Even within the film's exaggerated and irreverent tone, the twist feels forced and lacks impact. When the big reveal happens, the reaction isn't shock. It's more like, oh, that's it? It's as if the movie itself ran out of energy and just decided to end things however it could. And the humor? At first it works. I chuckled a few times here and there. but after about 40 or 50 minutes, the jokes start repeating themselves. You know that friend who keeps telling the same joke over and over, thinking it's still funny? Yeah, that's what happens here. Another problem is the film's tone. It tries to mix horror, suspense, comedy, and family drama, all at the same time. But instead of balancing these elements well, it ends up diluting all of them. The drama isn't emotional, the suspense isn't scary, and the comedy loses its charm as the story progresses. The cast does a decent job with what they were given. Theo James plays the adult versions of Bill and Hall, and while his performance is fine, it feels a bit over the top at times. There are some interesting cameos, including the director himself and Elijah Wood, but the issue isn't the acting, it's the weak material the actors had to work with. As I mentioned before, the film loses itself by trying to juggle too many different elements, and in the end, it just becomes exhausting. And this isn't even a long movie. It's only 1 hour and 30 minutes. But at some point, the story starts to drag. It's a shame because I really wanted to like this movie. When we go to the theater, we always hope to be surprised, and I enjoy Osgood Perkins' work, but I feel like he does better when he leans into a more serious, introspective style of horror, like in Longlegs. Interestingly, he seems to have some talent for blending horror and comedy, but here, that mix just didn't work. Maybe in a future project more focused on comedy, he'll manage to get the tone right. My rating for The Monkey is 6.5. Now, one positive aspect worth mentioning, the soundtrack. It's well used for the most part and helps create an interesting atmosphere. However, in some moments, it feels wasted and doesn't have as much impact as it could. Still, it's one of the few elements that remain consistent from start to finish. Warning, spoiler section. From this point on, proceed at your own risk. Let's go. The story begins with Bill and Hall as children, growing up in a household filled with constant fights. Early on, we see a man trying to sell a toy monkey to a store, but in a brutal scene, he ends up being grotesquely killed. The toy then makes its way back to the boy's home, and this is where the film fully embraces its absurdity. In one of the most over-the-top scenes, the brother's babysitter takes them to a restaurant, and somehow, the monkey causes a bizarre accident. The woman gets her throat cut and falls straight into the deep fryer. From that point on, it's clear that the film is going all in on exaggeration and dark humor. The relationship between the brothers is quite different from what we're used to seeing in Stephen King stories. Instead of strong bonds of friendship like in Stand By Me, here we have two siblings who outright hate each other. Bill constantly bullies Hall, and Hall suffers both at home and at school. Interestingly, the film subverts a classic trope. Instead of a group of boy bullies, Hall is tormented by a gang of 6 girls. Amid all this, the mystery of the monkey continues. The problem is that while the first half of the film embraces its craziness in an engaging way, the second half completely loses momentum. After a 25-year time jump, Hall now has a son named Pity, but their relationship is distant. The boy lives with his mother and her new boyfriend, a motivational coach played by Elijah Wood, who tries to push Hall out of his son's life. Bill reappears with some strange news. The monkey is back, and, as expected, the deaths start again. From this point on, the story tries to build tension, but ends up becoming repetitive. Neighbors die in bizarre ways, getting run over by lawnmowers or being randomly attacked by snakes. The plot twist comes when we discover that Bill actually has control over the monkey. He found out that it was Hall who, unintentionally, caused their mother's death by wishing for his brother to die. Obsessed with revenge, Bill spent years searching for the toy, and with the help of a mysterious man, managed to get it back. His plan? Use Hall's own son to wind up the monkey and kill him. The climax takes place in an abandoned hotel, where Hall and Pity are kidnapped. The tension should be high, but instead, we get absurd and even ridiculous scenes, like a wasp attack that kills one of the characters and a moment where the monkey plays a drum solo, almost as if it's celebrating. And here's the problem. Instead of a powerful ending, the movie just stops. What started with a promising tone turns into a series of over-the-top, nonsensical events. When the credits roll, it feels like the story itself gave up on taking things seriously. In the end, The Monkey had all the ingredients to be a great horror comedy, but fell apart in execution. The beginning is fun, the gore is well done, and there are some interesting ideas, but the second half completely collapses. If you enjoy trashy movies and don't mind a story that goes off the rails, you might have a good time. But for those expecting something more balanced, disappointment is inevitable. Now tell me, do you think this movie managed to balance horror and comedy well, or did it turn into a messy disaster? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit that subscribe button below, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel grow. That's it for today. Big hug, and see you in the next video.